Hey, it's me, Nalthazar, and welcome to another Magic the Gathering Puzzle Quest video. In today's video, I'm going to be going over the commons that caught my eye from Strixhaven. So, let's get into them. Now, I know you might be surprised. Nalthazar, why are you making a video on only commons? Well, I'm making a video on only commons because I think there are more than 10 of these that I have on my list. So this set is just so deep. There are so many good cards all the way from common all the way up through masterpiece that each of the different rarities needed their own video. Unless I was to make like an hour-and-a-half video that no one would watch. So, yeah. Anywho. Let's go ahead and dive into these commons, shall we? The first one is Bury in Books. It's a 7 mana spell. It has Enchanted. It's going to put Enhanced. It's going to put 2 enhanced gems on the battlefield when it enters your hand. And when an opposing creature attacks, if this card is in your hand, it gains 2 mana. If your opponent has 5 or less cards in their hand, return target opposing creature to their hand. If this card was enhanced, return that creature to the top of your opponent's library instead. So this is really cool for players that are newer, and it'll even be good, I think, for players all the way up through Platinum, just because blue doesn't really have a whole lot of removal built into its kit right now. And on top of that, 7 mana to bounce a creature is a perfectly reasonable card on its own. But when an opposing creature attacks you, this thing gains mana. And then if this thing is enhanced, instead of returning it to your opponent's hand, you return it to the top of your opponent's library, which means that your opponent is guaranteed to draw that card on their next turn, which kind of just takes away a card drawn for them. So this is just a solid card all around, and I really like that it will exist. I'm hoping that if it's enhanced, then for the return that creature to the top of your opponent's library instead will not factor in that opponent has 5 or less cards in their hand, but we'll have to see. The second card is Eureka Moment. Eureka Moment is an 8 mana spell. It is blue and green. It has flash and draw 2 cards, then convert 4 gems to your planeswalker's colors. So clearly, gem conversion was not strong enough in the current standard, so we needed more of it. Now, this is not a gem converter that I would use in a multicolored planeswalker deck, just because this converts 4 gems to your planeswalker's colors. 4 is really not a whole lot of gems, especially if it's going to be divided amongst different colors. However, if it's just 4 to a single color and you're running other gem conversion, then yeah, this card is going to be really good. And it replaces itself in your hand and gives you +1 card. So this card is absolutely phenomenal. I would suggest this in many green decks, many blue decks, because it's so good. And because it has flash, there's other silly shenanigans that you're going to be able to play with this card. So yeah, very good card. Definitely going to get quite a lot of value for a lot of players. The next card is Field Trip. This is a 5 mana spell that converts 6 gems to green and then learn. So basically, if you're going to learn from this card, what you're going to learn is that gem conversion is awesome and it is ridiculous. And this converts 6 gems to green. So that is a phenomenal card, because cards like, Elsha and Song of Creation exist in Standard. Cards like this are going to see a lot of play. Those of you who are afraid of Leafkin Avenger, yeah, these two right here are grounds for serious concern, because we're getting more gem conversion. Granted, I like gem conversion. I think it's fun. I think it makes for some pretty silly things that you can do. However, there are some pretty horrible loops that you can go up against also that are definitely terrifying. Field Trip is terrifying. Next on the list is Fortifying Draught. This is 8 mana, or Draft, right? Fortifying Draft? Drought? No, not Drought. I think it's Draft. It's 8 mana. It's got flash. You gain 3 life. Then target creature you control gets +X until end of turn. X is the amount of life you have gained this turn. So this card is here because you give a creature +X until end of turn, where X is the amount of life you gain in a turn. If you pair this with some of the other massive life-gaining cards in the game, you can give some absolutely massive buffs. This is actually going to be one of the biggest buffing spell cards in the game because you can gain a lot of life. A lot of life. Because even if you exceed your maximum life total in life gain, that still counts as life gained. So if you have, say, Alhammaret's Archive out and you use Nissa's Revelation, which normally gains 20 life and now gains 40 life, and then you play this, which because of Alhammaret's Archive you'll gain 6 life, this will give a creature you control plus 46, plus 46 until end of turn. If you play multiple copies of this in a turn, then you will get much more than that buff. If you're running some kind of gem conversion with a bunch of spells, and you have something thrown into your deck that can gain you a bunch of life, and this, then you could go up against some absolutely terrifying loops where this thing just absolutely melts you. So the advantage, the good thing about this card is that you can't cast it even though it has flash, you can't cast it in between your creatures attacking. So it's not like if your first creature has lifelink and then it hits your opponent for a truck ton of damage and then you get an opportunity to play this. No, it doesn't work that way. Maybe it will someday, and if it does, this card will just get even better. As of now, I think this is going to be more of like a gimmicky fun card that's able to do some absolutely ridiculous things and isn't going to be like an absolute necessity in any given deck. But nonetheless, the level of power that this has in a common is kind of scary. And there's just so many scary cards with flash in this set that I'm really thinking that it'll be very possible to build some really cool Calomax decks when this set comes out. So Fortifying Draught is definitely a very good card. Next up is Infuse with Vitality. This is an 8 mana spell. It is green and black. It also has flash. And until end of turn, target non-token creature you control gains Berserker, Death Touch, and Enchanted. When this creature dies, return it to the battlefield under your control, then gain 4 life. So what's really nice about this card is that it gives your creatures kind of a way of just like automatically killing one of your opponent's creatures, and then you get the creature back. So this is not strictly better than removal because you very well may lose your creature, and if you don't lose the creature, then you're likely going to have lost some toughness on that creature when it hits one of your opponent's creatures. However, when the creature dies, it comes back to the battlefield. So if you've got creatures that have really cool enter the battlefield or on death abilities, then this will be a really cool card to play. And the coolest thing about this card, and the reason why it's on this list, is that this card is also green in its color identity. Green struggles with removal, and in the common and uncommon range of this set, we're actually getting quite a lot of removal in green, and so it's going to make green decks a lot more viable. And green definitely has the creatures to back something like this card up. Next up is Leyline Invocation. This is 14 mana, which is a very steep cost. It's a green spell, and you create a fractal token, then increase its level by X, where X is the number of green gems. Remember, a fractal token is going to be a support that gives your first creature a power toughness boost equal to its level when it attacks. So I think it's pretty reasonable to guess that you'll be able to get somewhere in the realm of 15 to 25 green gems out on the battlefield pretty easily. And we've already got some other cards that have been spoiled earlier that are going to give us more green gem conversion because, we needed that. And so this card I really don't see as being all that difficult to play. And since that fractal token just stays on the battlefield and is resilient, it's not like if you're playing other green gem conversion, you're going to destroy the thing very easily. And so realistically speaking, this card here could wind up boosting you 15 to 25 per casting to your first creature every time it attacks, which is an absolutely massive buff, especially for a common spell. The fractal token cards in this set are absolutely terrifying, especially if fractal is going to be as good as it looks like it's going to be good on paper. So I'm really excited to try fractal out. There's another common in blue that does something somewhat similar to this, not nearly as powerful, but it costs less mana, so that makes it cool. But I can just imagine now some kind of silly looping shenanigan nonsense that makes fractal tokens, and then the first creature just hits for like hundreds. So yeah, this card, definitely cool. Next up is Mage Duel. Mage Duel costs 10 mana. It's yet another green spell. When you cast a spell, this card's mana cost is reduced by 2 permanently. Then, target creature you control gains +2/+4 until end of turn. Then that creature fights the first opposing creature. So this gives your first creature a power buff. It gives it a toughness boost that is, pretty decent at +4. and then it's going to fight the first opposing creature. So green has big creatures, but the real key here is that this just gives green players another way of killing your opponent's creatures. And since you can lower the mana cost of this by playing other spells, you can still do some other cool things, keep this card further down in your hand, and then wind up casting it for free to remove some of your opponent's stuff. I really like this card for newer players. I don't see this as being something that players in Platinum will have much use for, but definitely in Bronze and Silver, maybe even in Gold, you'll be able to get some serious value out of Mage Duel. Next on the list is Mage Hunter's Onslaught. This is an 8-mana black spell, destroy target opposing creature. Then your opponent loses 2 life for each creature they control that has Defender, Reach, or Vigilance. I mean, this card here is just like a perfect example of how times have changed from when the game first came out to where we are right now. Because an 8-mana black spell, like Unholy Hunger, that destroyed target opposing creature, and then you gain 2 life, was a rare. And this is a common. And it's basically the same thing, except instead of gaining 2 life, your opponent can lose 2 life. Granted, it's for each creature they control that has Defender, Reach, or Vigilance, but nonetheless, this is kind of like a perfect counterpart to that, and this is a common. So this is a fantastic card for players regardless of your collection. It gives you another piece of removal, which is always good. Granted, I suppose not necessarily regardless of collection, because I will still use Mythos of Nethroi, Hagra Moling, and Ruinous Ultimatum over this thing, but that's because I happen to have all of those. If you don't have them, then you definitely want to keep your eye out for this card, because it is quite a good card. Next up is Mortality Spear. This is a 12 mana spell, once again, green and black. It has flash, again. When you gain life, if this card is in your hand, it gains 2 mana. And destroy the first opposing non-token creature. If you can't, destroy an opposing non-token, non-land support. So this is an absolutely phenomenal card. Like, especially at common, this is a great card. This card alone almost is going to allow Nissa Worldwaker to exist in Standard again, because she's going to have removal. It's going to be non-targeted removal, and it's also going to be getting rid of opponent supports if they don't have creatures down. So she already got a little boost by getting that Black-Green Saga that can destroy your opponent's creatures, and you've also got access to the Great Aurora. But now that we've got this thing too, we just have so much removal that's entering into green that green is just going to become absolutely terrifying. So green is able to get mana like nobody's business. This thing costing 12 mana is going to mean nothing to green decks. And so, yeah, this card, this is the common that I personally want the most. I hope that I get it in like my very first pack, because I cannot wait to start using Nissa Worldwaker again and destroying people with it, because oh my gosh, she's gonna get so good. Next on our list is Rise of Extus. So this is a 12 mana spell. It is white and black. Exile target opposing creature, then exile the first spell from your opponent's graveyard, then learn. So I don't know what the white-black learn card is for common. I think you really only get to pick from that one card. But the key here is that this gives white an exile target opposing creature card in the common range, which is definitely a valuable card. I personally would rather use Dire Tactics, even though it makes you potentially lose life if you don't have a human out, because it costs 6 mana instead of 12 mana, and still is also white and black like this is. However, this still is going to be a very good card if you do not have Dire Tactics. So once again, I'm recognizing that not everybody has every card, even just commons and uncommons. And so if you are newer to the game, or you just don't have Dire Tactics, or you just don't have a really good acumen of or collection of white removal, then this is going to be a phenomenal card for you to keep your eyes out for. Also, the art is pretty cool. I really like the art on this. Next up is Serpentine Curve. So this is that other fractal card I was talking about earlier that's blue. This one is 9 mana. As I said, it's blue. You're going to create a fractal token and increase its level by X, where X is 2 plus the number of different spell cards in your graveyard and exile. So in a reasonable deck, you're going to have somewhere between, I don't know, like, especially if you're playing this card in some kind of fractal nonsense, somewhere between, I'm guessing, 5 and 8 spells. So this is going to be able to boost your fractal by 7 to 10, which, if you've got a way of looping a little bit and just getting a whole bunch of these fractal type tokens down, then this kind of card is going to be absolutely massive. If you don't have a way of doing that, then this card is not going to be absolutely massive. This card being blue instead of green definitely hurts its cause a little bit, but nonetheless, you could still pair this with a blue planeswalker like Rawl and try and do some pretty wacky things because Rawl is able to superload his graveyard. So I don't see this card necessarily as being super powerful out the gate. However, it's a card that I'm interested in and could very well actually wind up being quite powerful if fractals are good. So it made the list. Next up, oh, I love this card. Okay, so this card, Square Up. It's 8 mana, it has flash, it is green and blue, and target creature's base power and toughness becomes 4/4 until end of turn. So if you didn't see my video back in Throne of Eldraine, where I said that the best card in the set was a common, and that common was Kenrith's Transformation. Kenrith's Transformation made a creature into a 3/3, but there was a bug with the card that made it so the creature's base power toughness became 3/3. So what you could do with Kenrith's Transformation was you'd put it on Nissa Worldwaker's elemental tokens, and then they would get huge. Well, this is going to make them 4/4s instead of 3/3s. Granted, this is until end of turn, so it doesn't have the same staying power as Kenrith's did. And we also don't have access to something like Trostani, although the Quandrix Elder Dragon is probably going to be able to give that a run for its money. So, you know what? Who knows? But nonetheless, this card right here is just yet another card that's going to make a Planeswalker like Nissa Worldwaker seem absolutely busted. Because, especially in Greg's hands, Greg is just going to be spamming the first ability probably over and over again. Maybe they use the second ability, but then that makes all the cards in their hand potentially make those elemental tokens. And then if they put Square Up on those elemental tokens, they're going to be hitting you hard. And a lot of the decks that I run against, at least with Nissa Worldwaker and Platinum, are using Phylath, which makes a ton of those elemental tokens. So this card is absolutely terrifying. This is one of the cards that I am the most scared to go up against from the set, just because I see a lot of Nissa Worldwaker play coming up, especially since she has apparently entered the rotation for regular Planeswalkers, so you'll be able to get her outside of the Dual Decks event. And yeah, this card, super cool. You definitely want to keep your eyes on it. If you get it, try it with Nissa Worldwaker. I guarantee you're going to have fun. Like, that's my personal guarantee. Well, actually, I can't personally guarantee that because you might not be the type of person who enjoys tokens. But if you are the type of person who enjoys tokens, then yes, I guarantee you will enjoy this card with Nissa Worldwaker. And the final card on the list, at least I think it is, click, 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 yep, is Teach by Example. So this is a 6-mana spell. It is red and it is blue. And copy the first other spell card in your hand, and then that copy gains half of its mana. So a common for 6 mana that copies the first other spell in your hand and gives it half mana? Yes, please. You can get so much value out of this card. It's awesome. This card's great. I love it. So I'm really excited for this. There's a lot of spell copy in the set, so I imagine you're going to be able to do some absolutely wacky and awesome things. So that's it for my commons. There's a lot of really good commons in this set. Keep an eye out as you're opening your packs, as I'm sure you'll get a bunch of these. Thank you so much for watching, as always, and I will see you in the next one.